Hello, and we are back to the Awaken podcast. I'm your host, Maria Christine, and I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Alisa. Alisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the offer to be here. So
Absolutely.
grateful.
Absolutely. I'm going to read a little bit about Alisa, but then I'm also going to let her share about herself as well. But Alisa and I actually connected because we are in a similar group mastermind experience right now. We have been doing some work behind the scenes, some collaborative work together, and getting some things in place. And this woman was honestly breathtaking. And I'm so excited for her to share her journey in entrepreneurship. But Alisa is a business architect, strategic mentor, and founder for helping established entrepreneurs rebuild and scale businesses that are already successful but structurally capped. Alisa brings nearly 4 decades of leadership and being an entrepreneur over a dozen businesses. She has built, scaled, and exited multiple companies, including a 28-year brick and mortar that she successfully sold, creating a turnkey operating business for the new owner to step into and immediately make income. This woman also has made a recent pivot as she deepens in her own journey. And that's where I'm so excited to chat on how she went from some of the more traditional brick and mortar businesses to what she's doing now. So, Alisa, again, welcome. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you again so much for the invite. It has been so beautiful actually working with you, and what a blessing your gifts are to humanity as well. And I'm just so glad that we connected. And yeah, some of the latest shifts that I had were because of you. So grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Alisa, I like to ask people because I know sometimes people wonder, when you become an entrepreneur or a business owner, it's like, is that something that you knew from a young age that you were going to do? Because I know for some people it is, whereas for others, it's almost like something that you kind of land in or end up in. So, I'd love to know, how did you get into your own entrepreneurial journey? Would you share, like, where did that start?
I love this question, and like my crown chakra is lit. Like I feel like my hair is standing up. It's so interesting because it's come full circle to a project that I'm opening up with the Firehorse year. So I literally just did a deep dive of like what got me here. At 54 years of age, how did I get here? So I went all the way back to the beginning, and I remember as a teenager, I was an athlete who had dreams of wanting to be an Olympian. So I was already at a very young age in the 3D space of like an alpha female being developed. So very tenacious, grit,
And I'm
in a
seeing like
teenage.
focus, like you brought in
Right.
this like focused discipline. I mean, because if someone wants to be an Olympian, like you knew,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what that was gonna take.
Yeah. And so, true source, God, spirit kept on telling me I'm preparing you for something more. But of course, I'm, a teenager. I'm like, well, this is what I'm doing. I don't care if this is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
And I remember building a list of what I called it as a teenager, I think was like needs. But now I'm thinking of it as it's like non-negotiables, just
Oh,
boundaries of choices that I make in the future. These are my needs. And I also gave myself grace of like temporary, like it's okay to temporarily break this boundary for long-term like results.
yes,
So
yes.
that was huge. So freedom, getting to the point of your question, freedom was number one and has been number one ever
Mhm.
since. Two through five have moved throughout my entire life, depending on where I was at in my life.
Yeah,
My daughter is now 33, so obviously when she was younger, my two through five were a lot affected.
yeah,
Being a mom.
absolutely.
Um, but anyway, so freedom. And to me, what freedom meant is to create myself as a conduit for the energy source of money so that I didn't have to punch a clock, be stuck in traffic to get to work. Um, I always wanted to be in joy, whatever I was doing.
Mm,
So joy, happiness was also two through five, moving, through those top
yeah.
five. But that's how I started in entrepreneurship. However, my journey didn't start out the gate as an entrepreneur. I went to college because I was the oldest grandchild in a family of, you know, uh, a beautiful family, but they all had children at a young age. So teenagers, out
Oh,
of wedlock and then would get married. Uh,
yeah,
multiple ch children, very, very poor, but filled with love, just a very close-knit family.
yeah,
And so I had the internal pressure of attending college, where
yeah.
no one else in the family had attended college. So I went to
Wow.
college. I wanted to be a communications major, so Oprah. Like I wanted to own my, like have my own talk show or be in journalism, speaking the truth of what's going on in the world.
I love that. I mean, just like hearing that, right? And kind of like knowing where you landed, where we end up is insane. And so like I love that like even then you maybe knew you again, it's like you knew speaking truth was gonna
Yes,
be part of your journey, right? Like
yes,
full
yes.
goosebumps, right? Wow. Okay.
So I get to college and I'm a regular college kid that wants to be seen, heard, felt in a group of other college kids and but in the meantime I still have this compartmentalized, very tenacious like I am going to do this and that one was a resounding like strike of like no, like this isn't even preparation, this is a no. And I still went for 2 years. And then I realized my second year when I got into a real communications class, because you have to do prerequisites up until that,
Yeah.
I realized intuitively, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but intuitively, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't survive here because I would tell the truth at the expense of, and like, because of integrity.
Yes.
And what I was given is this resounding of, you will get eaten alive in this industry. You will not be able to shift the industry
Yeah.
at the point that you're at now. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I ended up, I think subconsciously, really, I started dating, which then became my husband. At the time, we were married for 14 years and had a daughter. I moved back to my hometown and bought a gym. Like I had been a gymnast, and would go back and watch my athletes compete. So I
Yep.
still like had a really close connection with the gym that I coached at. And
Oh,
I ended up buying that gym. And so that's how I became an entrepreneur.
that's wild. That's wild. And at the time, so it sounds like at the time when you really then started your entrepreneurial journey, it ticked off a couple boxes though, like one, freedom. Like, you know
Yes.
what I mean? You said freedom and flexibility and not really having to punch into a 9 to 5. So it was that, but also it like filled a passion of yours. Like
Oh,
you're
yes.
very passionate, it sounds like, not just about like fitness and movement, but specifically gymnastics.
Yeah, and the goal at that time, especially at the beginning, was to teach life skills through the sport of gymnastics because it
Mm,
wasn't, yes, I had an innate like desire to create an Olympian, but it wasn't
yes.
at the expense of them being a human, like developing a human. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's huge. And I think maybe we're seeing more of that in the industry. I don't know as much about like the fitness, gymnastics, all like the fitness world, but I do think that more of that is needed, right? Like it's not to finesse the physical skills at the expense of their mental health, at the expense of their emotional health, at the expense, right? Like no, like honestly, people are at their best when they get to have their passion, but also get those life skills. So it sounds like you were already like at the front edge of that, just even doing that in your brick and mortar. And you were in that for 28 years? No.
So I was in that for longer than that. I owned that gym for 4 years and then bought the gym of 28 years on between year 4 and 5. And I owned both of those gyms for about a year or two. Um,
Wow.
yeah. Now, the interesting thing that you said about my first experience in that industry, I didn't realize how toxic and broken it was until I got into it as a coach. And it wasn't just me, but a pack of other coaches, and some were gym owners as well, kind of went behind the scenes and created our own like inner circle of, we're going to create a new environment for athletes.
Wow.
And if they don't become champions or beat like the old like coaches in the room and the old gyms that have been like annihilating the competition for decades, that's okay because
Yeah.
we're going to have healthy humans. And what ended up doing is it just shifted the energy. And we were the beginning of that transition, and it was in our state, in our region, so not nationally. However, I do believe, even though I was only in my young 20s. I do believe that that was happening all over the United States. Back then, you didn't have cell phones even. So I couldn't like I could feel that we were all doing this, but
Yeah.
I didn't have a knowing based on facts. Um,
Right, right. It's not like
like
social
you do
media
now.
proof was like showing you that, but it's like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds like it feels like you could feel that wave of change beginning to happen that you were
Yes.
part of.
Yes. And then what it did, I mean, now we're getting into like the gymnastics world, which I geek out about still. I still love the industry, even though I have nothing to do with it
Oh,
anymore.
I
But
love that.
what that did though is it created a duality. So now I know more about the spiritual realm. It
Yes,
created duality that brought in somebody like Larry Nassar, who is a very vile human being that did
yes,
very horrible things to the Olympic team with
yes,
the knowledge of the majority of us in the industry. And so so that was the duality. You have this group of people that are changing the environment, and then you have souls at his level that are I want to say it's kind of like a breeding ground for that because we're so in the love and energetic feel of joy, and we're young in the industry. So our boundaries, yes, we're strong, but we're also young. Like we're not the old people in the room that feel like in this industry that's very political. Also,
yeah,
um, you still have to play a little bit of a game and a dance, with that. And so I'm not saying that it was allowed with a blind eye. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some in the room that knew and didn't say anything because of the cost to their athlete of not making the Olympic team. I think that
yes,
those are real things.
yes,
However, if the majority of us knew exactly what was going on, we would have never okayed it. It would have been like we would have opted out and said, we're not going to the Olympics this year, then, as a nation, like we
yes.
boycotted in 1980. I do believe that to be true. But anyway, so it's just interesting when and this is like so parallel to what all of us are being stepped into
Yeah,
now
yeah,
in the
yeah, that's
world.
what I was,
It's
yes,
like preparation, and that's what I was told all along is like I'm preparing
yes.
for something more, and this is the more. So I went up against some
Yeah.
very huge oligarch like
Patriarchy
yes.
forces. Yeah,
Yes. And
yes,
I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that my reputation might be damaged because I know I am going with high integrity and for the betterment of the children.
yes.
It wasn't even about my business. Like at that point early on, I didn't care about making money. I knew I needed to make some money, but it
Right.
literally was only for I want to make a difference in the life of children through the sport of gymnastics.
Yes,
And then
yes,
the competitive side is the part that I'm talking about. Like the competition side is the part that I think opened up like the Pandora's box of how do you take down and infiltrate something that's been there for decades and have built up pretty strong and it has its own life of its own
yeah,
outside of one or two people. It's like the energetic field of the environment is this
yes.
way. So, well, how you do it is how we did it. Like, and time is alignment. It took us about a decade, but it started chipping at the way. And the old people either retired, quit, or were found out
Or
that they were bad
justice.
things.
Just
Yes,
yes.
justice. Yes,
Justice in due timing. It's all happening on its own
yes.
timeline. Right. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And then the older people in the room that were actually of high integrity but didn't have the courage or I don't know, like the numbers didn't feel backed. They then connected with us, the young guns,
Yes.
and then we built it up from there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's so much to unpack in that, but a couple of things I want to highlight is business is not just business. I mean, you're exemplifying, Alyssa, and we haven't even like gone further in your journey yet, but
Yeah.
we're already exemplifying that business is about for many women, it's about making a difference, making an impact. And when we actually focus less on the numbers, now I'm not saying throw out the baby in the bathwater because I also know that you love data, numbers, and systems.
Um,
So we're not saying throw it out,
yeah.
but we are saying though when you make it more about your mission, like you said, yes, you had this gym, but it was about how can I shift the industry? And you and some others, right, like didn't agree with how it was being done. You made it your mission and your vision to focus on how can we make this about the kids and getting them life skills and just building them up to be good humans and also having fun, with like the sport. So I just like really want to point that out that yes, business does need to make money, but your drive, your motivation, it's going to fuel you so much more. If it's not just about like, oh, I just need to make another buck. It's like, no, how am I making a difference in the world? Then you also pointed out this holding the duality of like, we all know there's just that similar energies happening right now, even especially if you're here in the United States, but across the world.
Yeah.
The old system is dying, the patriarchy is beginning to go away, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be messy and ugly. And for those of us that are here as the light workers, it's like we need to really ground in right now and focus on the mission and the
Yes.
vision. And that doesn't mean that we don't bear witness to what's going on. And like you said, like, had you guys known even back then, like, of course, when people see something, we say something. And we have to keep focused on the mission and the vision. Otherwise,
Yes.
if we focus on the hate, if we focus on the anger, right, we just get pulled down into that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, like, what just a beautiful way you just articulated that. So, Alisa, I'm gonna like fast forward just a smidge because I'm genuinely curious now, and I know your journey's had some like your own loops and turns. But how did you go from a brick and mortar business and that mission to when did you begin to realize and have this stirring that you really wanted to begin to venture out? Like I would really consider you what they call like a serial entrepreneur. I mean,
Yes.
you really
That's so funny. That was David's like one of his taglines. I'm a serial entrepreneur. It's so funny.
yeah,
So I love, and what I love about this is like you had no idea about this part of me, and we've worked together for a while,
yeah, no. And I love
and
how this just came up.
yeah. So one thing I want to tap on before I move forward to like how that kind of like how I became more outside of the gymnastics entrepreneurial space. So uh when when people are stepping into being an entrepreneur, I oftentimes talk about my businesses as being like children. And if you're a parent, you'll understand the peril or the comparable, like how that compares
Yes.
is you're birthing something energetically that is going to live past your life here and have a ripple effect that's far more than you can do on your own. And
Wow.
so that's impact. And especially right now, and this is like, way too forward in our podcast, but that's what I'm feeling extremely called to because of my skill set on in the 3D space of how to create a business. Just take your creativity, your gift. It's very easy to just plug it into, and especially now with tech. Like
Yes.
when I started this journey, there was none of this stuff. Like it was you had a website and you had business cards and you networked. Like, like
Yes.
seriously old school now. Looking back at it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so old school. But
Yeah.
how it came to be was my first boyfriend as a teenager, his name was David. Um, Back then, there wasn't cell phones. He lived an hour and a half north of me. It was
What?
like, epic, like I don't know, like collapsing like all space and time to connect with somebody that's an hour and a half away.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
just because, we had pay phones ready to put quarters in to like get a hold of somebody and hope they answered their phone, like it's just so needless to say, we met during a summer. I went on break from gymnastics. My mom was like, "You're going up to your aunt's house. You are being obsessive about gymnastics. It's really unhealthy. You need to get away." So I go to my aunt's house. She's kind of like the flop house where like my cousins hung out, my cousins' friends hung out, just and so much freedom. Like
Oh my
Maria,
gosh.
so much freedom. I've never experienced this kind of freedom before because my parents were just like thumbs on everything we did, like
Yeah.
so I met my aunts and my cousins introduced my sister and I to David and his brother Michael, and we were just
Oh,
inseparable as a group the whole time. Went to, out on the park. So David at the time would carry cardboard and do like um uh um a break dancing, and he was just this very outgoing human, and I was so
oh,
attracted to him in the way that he was so charismatic, and you could tell he had a love, like a joy and love for people. He would ask questions. He was 17, and it was extracting like information for
wow.
good, like bringing out the good in that person to really get to know them, and then he just had this innate ability to like help them step into their joy and having even more fun.
That's
And
amazing.
so one story real quick I want to share is he had a toothbrush in the back of his pocket. And I was like, why do you have a toothbrush in your back of your pocket? Like, this is so, I'm so curious. And he's like, well, because, I never know where I'm going to land at night. I head on the pillow and I definitely want to be able to brush my teeth in the morning with my own toothbrush. And I was like, what? Like, there is no way in any day of my life up until that point that my mom would ever allow me to just like, oh, this is where I'm going to just like spend the night. Like, it was like a two-page, like all the questions, meet the parents, meet the
Yes.
kids, like,
Yeah.
So I was just like, this guy is free, like
Yeah.
immediately drawn to that number
Oh,
of freedom,
that level. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so fast forward, we obviously, we broke up because you just can't stay together in that kind of day and age.
yeah.
Then,
And life.
yeah,
You had other journeys to be had, each of
yeah.
you.
So we broke up and then we kind of stayed together and we never really saw each other very much, but there was always communication in the background through the cousins, or like I would ask how David was,
Mm,
David would ask the cousins how I was, but we were always with other people. I mean, I married like at the age of 20, so pretty young. I was
yeah.
married for 14 years. And David got married also. And so our lives never really like clicked like that clicked like it's time
Yeah.
until I was separated from my husband at the time and my aunt passed away. And so my aunt would always say, if it's the last thing I ever do, it's going to be to
Oh,
get the two of you guys together. And believe me, she tried. Like, even though she loved my husband at the time, she was just like, you and David are meant to be. I just know it. And
she
so
always knew.
so when she passed away, my cousins and I put a note on his parents' home because they still lived there.
Yeah.
He put the note a little bit late, so he wasn't able to make the funeral. However, we all connected like 2 weeks later, and then him and I were married a year later. And
Wow.
so that began the journey of me exiting gymnastics because gymnastics is, especially if you want to be like a one percenter, it is an eat, sleep, drink. And I'm not saying it ruined my first marriage, but it wasn't like, a part of the plus,
Yes.
because my first husband actually despised gymnastics because of what he witnessed in it, of me always being on the phone with parents, always, just he was my venting post. So I was
And
always like, yeah,
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 and watching probably just how much it
so much.
needed from you. And it also sounds like, I mean, that was part of your soul path and purpose at the time,
Yes.
but you were entering a new chapter.
Yes, yeah. So when David and I decided to be married, we did a lot of like work together as a couple before we became a couple. Like, what are your goals, aligning spiritually, like where are
That's
you
so
at spiritually?
cool.
A
That's so
lot
cool.
of work because we both had, failing
That's
forward
yeah.
marriages.
Yes, that's true. So
You
it's like you
know?
really wanted to be like, okay, what do we both want for us? What are we
Yes.
both looking
Yeah.
for? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so one of the first things that I said to him is like, we're gonna have to pull me out of coaching because you coach from you coach from like 12 to 8 every single day. Now because I own the gym, I could do like off at 6. I could manipulate my schedule a little bit, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I'm still traveling on the weekends for meet season. It's just not a very, especially for a new marriage. And because we were so different than my first husband. First husband and I were like two islands that came together.
Yeah.
David and I were inseparable from the minute. Like our cellular structure was just like enmeshed in each other,
Yeah.
which was a new experience for me because I was hyper independent, very much like I even warned him. I'm like, I need my own space a lot, but
Yeah.
I never felt that with him. And
Yeah.
so we took me out of coaching and then we just started creating businesses from there. He had always had an entrepreneurial mind. He dabbled in entrepreneurship during the years that we weren't together, but
Oh, interesting.
he was always managing a company or a high-end salesperson. So he
Ah,
had the things that I definitely like managed my team and stuff. I had, 12 directors and 48 employees. So in that aspect, I was definitely developing my skill set of
yeah.
teamwork and, just organizational structure of how to communicate with your staff and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
At the time, our family enrollment was between 300 and 600. Well, when Dave and I got married, we began to start systemizing my gym in a way that was systemized, not based on us because we were exiting out, but
Yes.
it still needed to live and breathe beyond us. And
Yes.
so we got mentored right away by a couple very highly regarded mentors in the space of business. But then we earned the right to be mentored by John C. Maxwell, who is an author. He's
That name
made
sounds familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, if you Google him or chat him, like he has like, I don't
Yeah.
know, 40 books on leadership. So we earned the right to be mentored by him for a full year in a group setting.
Oh,
And
cool.
he taught us a lot about like failing forward, when you fail, you're learning. And so David and I put together what we called so we did a company called Ultimate Achievers Alliance where we taught people how to plug any goal into our system and it would become an achievement. And so then we brought that into our gym, into the leader, like a leadership for a factory system, like leadership
Yeah.
format system is what we call leadership format system. Some of the things I've like forgotten because that
Yeah.
part of it is no longer in me, but leadership format system. And then we would have like quarterly retreats with our staff where we would do our wins for the quarter, failing forwards for the quarter, and then news needs updates. And so it helped bridge all the departments because we had 12 departments within the building. And at this point,
That's
we
wild.
had we had created a gym that was over 1,000 families every single month consecutively. One of the top percentage, like I'd say 1, 2%, 3% of the gyms in the United States. And then, fast forward to after David passed, when I sold the gym, it was definitely like a 0.005 percentage gym in it because David passed before we got to see all of it come to fruition. Our goal was to like get over 2 million. And then by the time I sold the gym, it was coming into 3 million. And yeah. And so his year of death, he died August 31st. That rest of the year, we had checked off every single last goal that we had as a power couple,
Oh my
um,
God.
and to include the gym that I sold. And so we had built, gosh, I want to say over a dozen businesses, but at the time of his death, we were running six, and then the seventh one was the brick and mortar. So a lot of our businesses, we had a system within that. We would launch a business every year. And at
Oh,
year two, because according to the IRS, if you're not making business on year three, it's considered a hobby. So
yep.
at year three, if it wasn't making a dollar or it wasn't making the faucet like wasn't coming to the point where we could turn the faucet on based on the system and walk away, then
Yeah.
we just merged it with other businesses that we had that were similar and then took out the parts that didn't, or we would just close down the business. And so yeah, we had a marketing business at the time. We ran a network marketing team also that was global.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and so we had a financial company as well that we were partnered with. So we didn't own the financial company, but we were marketers for the financial company about
Oh,
how
okay.
to help people retire that didn't necessarily have a 401k built into their business because a lot of entrepreneurs they don't have 401ks. Like I didn't for my brick and mortar. And
Right.
so we found alternate ways for people to be able to create retirement incomes through the financial industry.
Oh
And
my God.
so, yeah,
I mean,
anyway,
Alyssa, you guys like so you it's so neat how your soul went from obviously like being in the brick and mortar, being in the gym. It was your whole life. And that was part of that chapter to then like from the moment you and David got together, I mean, it just seems like boom, things just you guys like you said, power couple. That literally it sounds like that was just your guys' mission here on earth was to just and before then dive into a conversation on like I'm going to go into how was like now your even most recent chapter of where your business is going, how that was soul led, how that's been source led. But before we get into the woo, I really want to point out something that Alyssa, like even when her and I started connecting and we both like looked at each other's charts and we exchanged like, what's your astrology? And I looked at what's her numerology. And like, and it's in your chart, right? You're very much, you like the systems and the structure. And I just want to point out that, like, while I love going into the woo, and while Alyssa and I have talked about how you want mission and vision to drive you and be the motivator and be the fuel behind you, but a business needs structure, a business needs system. Like, again, it's that duality and it's this blend of both. And so, Alyssa, will you just touch on how you see systems and structure being an absolute necessary pillar
Yeah.
in any business? Because again, then we can dive into like the fun woo conversation. And yes, I want things to come from people's intuition,
Yeah.
but also like if we only did that, then we're not. So yeah, would you share just like touch on why that's such a
Well,
big pillar for you?
yeah, so before David and I got married, like I said, we were kind of stuck under 650 for enrollment and registered families.
Yeah.
And it was because my gym was not systemized. It
Uh,
literally, David said to me once, and I'll never forget this, like it was within our first year of marriage. He said, Alyssa, if you got hit by a bus, would your gym like live on after you like died? And I was like, I would, I mean, my parents would probably dip in and help because they're the reason why I was able to get the gym to begin with. They were my financial backers, and then
yeah.
I bought it from them. But I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. And he's like, yeah, that's a problem. Like, you need to have a system that the gym can move on without even your director. And so we started having this
Wow.
conversation early on about like our boys team director, our girls team director, our preschool director. And he's like, so does that person know their roles and responsibilities? I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, but what are they? I'm like, I'm not absolutely sure. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, that's a problem. So like he starts like when he was a teenager, he starts asking me these questions that he knows the answer, but he wants me to get to the answer myself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so anyway, once we created the systems, and it's really not okay. It sounds very daunting, especially if you created a business. I mean, at that time I was probably making $6,000 a month. Now that was a long time ago too. So at the time, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna retire money, but it wasn't terrible either.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
pretty good. And because
Yeah.
we're talking about like 2000 let's see, I think it was like 2004 5 2004 5 so a long time ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
uh and so David started saying like, in order for this to because it was capped, basically like the gym was capped at the person, the human who
Yes.
is that person's personality. So now the gym is built on personality, which
Yeah.
I love hiring personality, but if there's not structure to it, then it won't live
Right.
on
It can
past that person.
flounder. It can flounder. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we and what I was saying before is like it's probably going to feel daunting if you're already at a place where, and I can't remember the income of the gym, probably $200,000-300,000 a year at that time, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So not a bad business, but now that was a business that I probably had like 20 employees at the time. Um, so I was open to being mentored by my husband at the time
Yeah.
to take a look at systemizing. We started with one department and built it out to prove the model. And it was my department, the team part, the part that I was most knowledgeable about and controlled the most. If you could,
Yes.
like I could detail every single position, every single part, to the point of like what time they clock in, what time they clock out. Like I knew all the ins and outs. So we started there. And it was just this beautiful, it took us like a year to kind of like prove the model of like, wow, okay. And then we had that year to compare the numbers of, and then we created income generating activities like every day. What does that person need to do? I mean, we didn't do it overnight, but my
Right.
point is we did that structural work so that anybody that we helped, because we used to do this before he passed away, of help people create. Our mantra was we created a life we didn't need a vacation from, and we were helping others do the same through business. And so we would be able to take any creation into a business and then create the foundations. We also took existing businesses that were already creating income that they needed. Like they had mortgages and house payments and like responsibilities. So they couldn't like go to zero. They couldn't even risk losing money. So we created the systems on the back end while their business is still going up and running, and then tested it out, for security's sake in one part of the business. And then once it was proven, which was so easy to do once we did it over and over, then it was
Yes.
just like, boom.
Mm.
We had it built to the point where it was systems and culturally, because what we discovered through our own experience of our business through the
Yeah.
gym, we systemized, we pulled away. We didn't take in consideration the culture of the gym.
Oh,
And so culture will eat systems for breakfast. We learned that from Dancing Maxwell and then actually went through it ourselves. Like,
wow.
but then when we had this I call it an amicable divorce, David called it a mutiny, but within our gym, we had a an extraction that happened where basically a couple employees were building another gym while they were inside the walls of our gym. And this was a very difficult part of my life, in the fact because gymnastics is a business that is heart centric, and you
Yeah.
really do become a family.
Yeah.
Now
So it
I've
feels like
worked,
a betrayal, right?
yeah,
Like,
but I've worked through all of that, and
yeah.
we're still friends. We talk. Obviously, there's a change of dynamics of the relationship. However, what it helped David and I do is we learned early on, oh crap, the systems are in place, but if the culture isn't there, it does not matter at all. So then what we failed forward learning, we went back into the gym. We basically put all our other businesses on hold at that moment, and we created a leadership like team, like almost like Night of the Round Table, like
Yeah.
created like the inner circle. We're gonna dive in deep. We're gonna find out like we did this very vulnerable thing where we put out this newsletter MailChimp where they could fill out the form of like we found out the first thing that all the customers were upset about was communication. Second was the cleanliness of the gym. And so like it's very humbling when
Yeah.
you've removed yourself and been like, I've systemized the gym, I'm traveling the world doing all these things, and then you realize your business is really not, the numbers are showing okay, like
Yeah.
financially, great. But culturally and in the community, I'm so grateful that that happened because I didn't know that it was
Yes.
happening because we weren't there.
What a
So we
beautiful
learned,
fail learn, you know?
yeah. So then we learned right on that we had to create the systems that were the numbers, which are not emotional.
Yeah.
David's like, the path is math. He's very unemotional when it comes to numbers. These are the numbers. But
Yeah.
then I was the lead of the culture. So we created how to have your staff fall in love with not just, and this is where I pulled in the athlete part of when I was coaching, not just when they open the door and come into the building of your business, but also are in love with their life outside of the business, because it's my frame of
Yeah.
mind before I even got into the woo that the happiest person in my building is the happiest person outside of the building. And so for me, it was very important for them not to miss all of their children's activities or to have a day off that's paid from the business, like not mandated from the government, like literally like, okay, like this is my gift to you. Thank you for doing these things. So those types of cultural structures in there so that I had most employees coming in saying, this is my business, even though they're not like owners.
Right,
They take
right. But they
ownership
actually
of their part.
feel, yes,
Yeah.
feel a part
And
of it.
so that to me, I mean, I hope that answered your question, but I do believe that that helped us go from, well, I know, from 650 to over 1,000. And then we realized that 1,000, between 1,000 and 1,200 enrollments in and out throughout the year was actually the best um, financial for the gym and the system that we had built. And we could have recreated another one because you get to a point where you're capping that and then you have to restructure the system.
Yeah.
But David and I were at the mindset of we're going to release the gym. We're going to sell it. And so this was before he passed away. We had already made that decision. And we
Yeah.
were working with a company to help us sell it internationally, but also I really wanted to sell it to somebody within the building. And so we started working with one of my directors that was a homegrown athlete. He'd been there since he was like a baby, like 5, 6 years old. He was in his late 20s, early 30s at the time. And he helped me with the gym, that amicable divorce that happened, and so
Wow.
he was an entrepreneur also because of, I think, the structure that I made for the gym. He was able to flip some houses. So he loved gymnastics, he loved coaching, he loved being at Black Hills, but it wasn't his only income source. So he
Yeah.
was able to then create a life that he was able to purchase the gym from me. And now he's running it. And it's this beautiful, like, continuation of a child that's now he's taking it where I and David were not willing to take it. Like we
Yeah.
were like, we need to move on. It's kind of like the year of the snake, like shed the old, moving into the new. And that's what happened. It'll be 2 years, July 1st. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So an example of like, I mean, you birthed this thing, right? Like back to that concept, like the gym, that was part of your baby, and but the legacy lives on, right? And
Yes.
someone else gets to carry the torch. And that would not have been possible had you not built in the systems. Or maybe it would have been possible, but you wouldn't have maybe gotten as much for it because again, like that
Yeah.
helped the business become more profitable. It helped you hand off a system to somebody else. So again, just to say, like, I love all the woo and why we need systems and structure
Yeah.
in place.
Well, you're spot on in the fact that when I was able to sell my brick and mortar, it was one of those sales that is like a 0.005% of all gyms. Like you just don't have that happen because most gyms start like mine as an athlete who wanted to coach and then didn't want to work for somebody else. Or a parent that was disgruntled as a parent of an athlete, and then they had the means to create their own gym. So
Yeah,
that's usually how gymnastic schools are built. And none of which understand how to build a business. And
right.
then I understood how to build a business because of my parents, however, not systemized until David. And then why I was able to sell it for the amount, and I was actually offered almost double from an organization that I said no to because I wanted to keep it within my
Oh,
family.
that's
Um, and the integrity of that. But it was because of the turnkey aspect. Literally, like the person that bought the gym on day one was able to pay the bank loan and still have money left over. So yeah, and that was on purpose also. Like I wanted to make sure. And of
yeah,
course, I made sure my auction mask was on first because this
yes,
is like leaving this business that I've been a part of the industry since I was 11 years old. And at that point, yes, David and I had created other businesses, but kind of going through the part where David passed, I had collapsed all of our other businesses and literally had no recurring income
yes.
after the sale of the gym. However, I was not worried at all. I knew I have the ability to create businesses myself.
Percent. Yeah.
I wasn't sure where I was going after David died. I was still in the healing phase. I didn't sell the gym until a couple years after he passed because I knew obviously I had to go through my own healing journey. And the person that
Absolutely.
bought it was very patient. But yeah, the reason why it was able to sell for the price point that it was because it was turnkey. And who wouldn't want that automatic? Those
That makes
payments
a
are
huge difference.
on auto payment,
Yeah.
auto, like literally, and didn't it continued to scale like a train. Like we
Wow.
were um we were going up in percentage before David passed about 10 or 20. It got up to be about 30 or 40% after he died. And the year after he died, I didn't do anything. I didn't step foot in the gym, but maybe twice. Like
Wow.
it ran on its own and the culture stepped up because of his death. And then yeah, and it kept on continuing to build. There wasn't 1 month that went backwards.
That's
And so
wild.
then I knew, I was like, oh, in his death, it even proved more true, that system combined with the culture. And that's part of my mission, of the next 40 years of my life, 30, 40 years of my life will be to help people, the woo part, like escape the matrix, get into their gifts, their creation, create a business, help them systemize from the beginning. Not like what I did. It took
Yeah.
me 10 years in before I systemized it.
Yeah.
You do it from the beginning, it's a lot easier.
Yes. Yes. So Alyssa, you have beautifully let in. Like we couldn't have wrote this better if we had a script, which we didn't. But now will you share? Again, now I know you even have other things going on, but you beautifully kind of led us into one of your main things that you are creating right now, where you're literally pulling in your wisdom, your gifts to help other people use their wisdom and gifts and make it profitable to heal the planet, to make a better world, but to systematize it and then to get out there and actually have a profitable business. I mean, I can't think of a better model that not only highlights your skills but that is also so needed in the world right now. So will you share more about that, knowing that also to our listeners, I'm going to be dropping all of Alyssa's things in the links in the show notes because she's got other projects going on. you do need to check out her world. But yeah, I would love to hear more about this program that you are building to help others step into their gifts and build profitable, passion, freedom-based businesses.
Yeah. So it's called the Infinity Freedom and it launches February 20th. And I'm so excited because, yes, I am into astrology, but I'm not an expert. And what dropped into my being was February 20th. And I was like, okay, February 20th. And so February 17th is the day of the fire horse. But on February 20th, if you Google or chat what that day is, I'm not going to give it away.
Yeah,
I was like, what? Like, then you just know. You just know, like, you are
beautifully written.
yes, you are open. And so, um, David passed away in 2022, and we're in 2026 right now. And time is alignment. It took me a little bit, I feel like a lifetime to get here, even though it was only, what, 3.5 years.
Yeah, yeah,
But as of late, in the last 6 months, it's just been like a kaleidoscope, like click, click, clarity, and then level up in myself. Click,
yes,
click, clarity. And it all comes back from what you just extracted from me being a teenager saying what brings me joy, what creates freedom, what makes me happy, what would get me out of bed without an alarm clock, like literally like I can't wait to get up and do my day. And then how is it raising the vibration, the frequency of the planet? Because when I was younger, it was like, how do I lift up the people that I'm impacting one on one? And now it's like, oh, it's bigger than that. It is literally how we're going to quote unquote 3D term win,
get
the
out of
dark and
this.
the light.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yes,
is. Because if
yes,
we can not turn a blind eye to the dark that's in the world, but see it and
yes,
and recognize it and put it out in awareness, but then I'm getting full body chills. But then your energy goes here to
yes,
your creation, your gift. We outnumber the dark and the light within those people because I used to believe it was like this outside force of dark. No, it's the dark and light within each of us because
yes,
we are all energetically connected.
yes,
And
yes,
so think about that in a stream of lights. Like you have one bulb that isn't lit and the rest are all lit. Eventually you replace that bulb with a lit bulb,
yeah,
or I don't know, you cut it out and then you reconnect it. Like
yes,
it's going to
yes.
get
Oh,
done.
yeah, 100%. And ultimately, like, we are returning back to that frequency, which is just everything is unconditional love.
Yeah.
Everything is unconditional love. But when we must, like you said, bear witness and direct attention to what we can control and even control, but like what we can create, what we
Yes.
can build. And when you shared this concept to me about infinity freedom, I mean, not only is it like just beautiful, right? Like all these pieces that you encompass, but I think so many people think, and I mean, I know this was me even. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I was in healthcare. And then here I am, like, in my fourth year of business or something like that. And I think some people think, well, I didn't go to business school. I wasn't raised by entrepreneurs. I know nothing about entrepreneurship. And yes, the business coaching world and the online business coaching world is exploding right now. I do think there is a lot of opportunity out there. But Alisa, your program, you bring in not just I'm a business coach. Let's create a business plan, right? Like you will
Yeah.
you share a little bit more about what makes this program different for those that
Yeah.
are listening who might be like, oh, wow, I could really join that and literally have a functioning business and a second stream of income or whatever it is. Yeah, share like what's all included in this.
So you come as you are. So you could maybe not have a business yet, or you could have a functioning business that literally you're like, Alyssa, I can't let a dime go out of my household. But I
Yes.
do know I'm strapped, like I'm noosed, or I'm being called to do something completely different. So how do we systemize this so it's operating, the income is coming in still, and I'm over here creating this? So that's the first thing. So even if you don't have a business, that's okay. Or if you have an existing business. One of the things that you brought up, which is so fascinating, is of course I hired coaches right out the gate when I moved into this space of healing because I knew that's um, how I lived after the death of my husband was because of people like you that are already in the space healing the planet. And so right away, I hired Her name is Lioness Senses. It's Lioness Senses. Yeah, Shayla Coomer. It's like Lioness Ents. Yeah. Anyway, she's a global force. You'll see her on TikTok and Instagram. But I hired her right away. She wasn't even 30. I don't think she's 30 yet. And so I know for me, I don't care at all the age. It's the wisdom that they have. And she was delivering what I knew I needed, moving my entrepreneurial background into the space of the healing
Gotcha.
community. So
Yes.
she was my first hire. Now I've hired several, and one what we're connected with was like my kind of big gulp at the time, like, oh, okay, I'm really investing now. Shayla was like a little bit like, oh yeah, it's not that much money. And I love her and I love her vibe. And then, hiring Stephanie was a little bit at that time having, I did have a ton of income coming in through my 3D businesses, but I knew those were all going to be burnt down and or sold. So moving into Stephanie and then being exposed because of Freedom Queen Live and just that opened me up and I was like, huh. And as I became more healed isn't the right word, but basically coming home to myself and
Yeah.
just, everything that's already in me being discovered in the woo space. I was like, wow, the coaching industry is very interesting because I see it will, and I feel like it already is starting to implode because what happens is you get
Yes.
this height, it's happened in the gymnastics industry. This is why, like being 54, having lived decades in industries, so you can
Yes.
see like the wave.
And the
So
patterns and the
yeah,
trends. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, humans are humans. Like that's the one that's the similarity. Like so I saw this go from like, you know, a $1,000 a month to $2,000 a month to 10K a month to 20, all these coaches getting paid these individual amounts. And I was like, wow, pretty soon there's going to be enough in the ethers of this coaching space that if the results are not showing
Yes.
outside of the coach and maybe one anomaly, two anomalies, like
Yep.
in the gymnastics, there are kids like, and I love Simone Biles, amazing, and I love her coaches. However, Simone Biles is Simone Biles because of Simone Biles. So if you can create gymnasts that are less talented, and I'm again not taking
Right.
anything away from Simone Biles because she
Yeah.
is magic and awesome. And obviously, the Olympics before last, you saw the deterioration of her mental game that
Yes.
had her come out, and then she beat that, which I loved her showing that to the world.
That was, yes. What a moment.
However, my whole point is like our gym, we created athletes out of every single 6'1" kid, a kid that most gyms would throw away because they were a little chunky, whatever. We had the system in place for athletes, mind, body, spirit, the four events, and they were successful. That is in comparison of what I'm seeing the early, things that are happening with the coaches because it's like anybody could open a gym, which is super alarming, and you just hire a bunch of coaches and then you create gymnasts. Same thing for coaching.
Yeah.
Anyone could become a business coach and say, I'm a business coach, and then charge whatever amount of money. And if you do a good job online, now, and this is what I'm seeing, I'm like, oh my gosh, because now that I'm intuitive, I can see behind all of the kind of gimmicky,
Yes.
um, but you're drawn in. Like I remember at the beginning going, oh man, I can't wait to be able to like justify spending 30K a month for this person. But then
Yes.
you get under the hood, and again, no shame on these coaches. I'm like, that's their journey. But my point about this whole thing is where I feel like the infinity freedom is, and I learned this from early on mentor in the marketing space when David and I first started launching our businesses. Instead of being the best, you're better than better. So it's a little bit of a term that's hard to like land on, but basically you're blue ocean. Like you're so out of the competition that people don't even think about you in your competitive field because you're so out. That's what Infinity Freedom is it isn't a coaching program. However, you're going to learn all that you would from a coach.
Yes.
But I believe that this was given to me as a conduit. So it's, I my whole phrase is like I'm the way, you're the way because the creative gift that's within you is there to be birthed. You have the freedom of choice to take the action to birth it, But if you unite and collaborate with somebody like me, and I'm probably not the only one that's being pulled from the 3D to 5D. I have a feeling because, once one goes, there's a lot more that show
Yep.
up.
Yep.
Uh, when I think this is going to be the transition of coaches, is basically the people that have awakened from the 3D that have been multi millionaires in this space that have moved over here and see it as, I'm not the guru. I'm not the actual like coach. I'm just the guide to guide you back home to self, because everything that you need for this creation to be birthed is within you. That's what the Infinity Freedom is, alongside with the systems. Like, because every business is going to be systemized in a different way, because it's like children. You're unique, but the
Yes.
foundations are still the same. What are your income generating activities that you spend time with every single day? What are
Yes.
your key performance indicators? Like, how do you know if you're going the right direction? Those are the metrics. And then, basically, like, how do you put in a, like, if you were to get a loan, from a bank, what is the book that you would hand them? So, like, how your business is ran from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Those three things are the most important. And then from there, you just put the uniqueness of, okay, is it a product base? Is it a service base? Is it, I mean, I'm not really in the space of like franchises or corporations. Those
Yeah.
aren't my wheelhouse, because they
Yeah.
already have their own systems that are not for you. They're
Yes.
for them. Like,
Yes.
so it's almost like I'm in competition. If I'm going to compete, it's against that. Like, pulling people out of living, like giving their magic and their creativity to a corporation, is what I know I'm here on the planet for, because those people are my age and are exhausted and have the feeling of 2 seconds from being like let go, because the
Yes.
economy is like,
Yes.
let's put all that energy into your business that you birth and expand the universe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And now is the time. Now is the time. And so it is. And so it is. Like, Alyssa, we could probably talk for hours, but I'm going to one, I just want people to know that I'm going to have the link to find Alyssa's program, Infinity Freedom, as well as just where to connect with her. So, Alyssa, is that going to typically be Instagram? Is that your preferred platform? Or where can people find you to just dive in and learn more about your work and how to work with you?
Yeah, so as we speak, we have a landing page being built for February 20th, so that it's like a one stop, because it's interesting because I have such a variety of skill sets, and
Yeah.
I'm collaborating with all sorts of people, like on the business end and then in the woo space, and then,
Yes.
I
Yes. So
also
there'll
have.
kind of be like a bit of a landing page. Okay.
Yes, yeah. So I'll get that, and it's like debuting on February 20th. So I'm really
Perfect. And
excited about
honestly,
that.
when this is airing, that might be beautiful timing. So I think that'll be
Right.
beautiful. So we'll have those links in the show notes. Alyssa, is there anything else? I mean, that was a beautiful conversation. I loved being able to witness your journey from like the beginning to the middle, systems, David, like that beautiful middle to like where you are now. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with before we wrap up our conversation today?
I think for those of you that are watching and you're in the middle of like what I call the messy middle. So you have definitely burned down all the old parts of you that have the old world. That's all done. And you're in the messy middle. So you're either in the beginning, the middle, or the end. This is the message that I wanted to give to you, is sit with it and open, like to receive the next steps, because you are needed. You are needed to create this new world. And we're all going to have, it's like a spider web. We're all going to have a piece of that web, that beautiful web around the entire world. So it's not just in the United States. We're being awakened throughout the globe. So if you're in the messy middle, just, sit there, open to receive, and you'll be told the next step. And it's just one step at a time in joy, in the energetic field of joy, one step at a time.
That was beautiful. Alyssa, I'm honored to have you on as a guest today. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait for when this airs, and I hope everybody has a beautiful day, a beautiful week. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Maria. Thank you so much for the invite. Mwah. Love you.
Love you too.